Hi folks, Canadian Prepper here, back again with the daily dose of doom and gloom. Please forgive me in advance. This is going to be a shorter video. I got some kind of COVID-induced brain fog or something. I don't know what it is. You guys probably know what I'm talking about. If you've ever experienced COVID symptoms, then you know that you get this brain fog where you just can't think straight. You feel dumb. You can't find the words. If you ever felt like that, if so, let me know in the comment section below. Maybe it's the Marburg virus. Maybe it's just that Joe Biden dementia sinking in. Anyways, guys, let's just get right through this. So we got a 50% fatality rate virus spreading right now in sub-Saharan Africa. Now, on any other day, this would not be a global cause for concern. I know that sounds bad to say, but typically these things are concentrated in one part of the continent, usually in one country within one locale. This is all over Africa, okay? This is very concerning. We're talking about a continent that is the size of 3 or 4 United States combined. If most of you guys are probably not familiar with the fact that the Mercator map is false. It's not real. The map, the true map, this is the Mercator map versus the true map size, okay? So this Marburg virus has been detected in, I believe, Cameroon and Tanzania. Okay, this is a distance of, the equivalent would be from LA to New York City, okay? So that's what we're talking about. This virus has already been found in 4 countries, and the cause for concern is that it's not aerosolized airborne like COVID. It's supposed to only be transmitted via bodily fluids, but the incubation period is up to 21 days. You can see the true size of the United States there. It's like we got some sort of inferiority complex with how we've created this map. But you can see how tiny all these other countries. I mean, the African continent is massive. And yeah, it's not looking good, because that means that this thing is spreading. And does Africa have the detection systems required to really catch this thing in its tracks is the question. I do think if we get word that this thing has exited the African continent in the Middle Eastern or Indian or European direction, I think we're going to see another global panic as a result of this. This could be it. Now, again, this is not aerosolized airborne. This does not have the R0 capability of something like Omicron or something like that. This is, at best, maybe partially droplet airborne. I was reading some articles that say that some Ebola-like strains can stay alive in airborne particles for up to an hour, but typically this is only through contact. My concern is there's not a whole lot of flight traffic across Canada, across Africa in this direction. Sorry, COVID brain. I think that's what it is. I don't know. I'll have to go get tested or something. But I mean, what's the point now? Everybody's probably had it 3 or 4 times. So, yeah, the distance. I mean, you know, that's very concerning. And it's propping up in different countries as well in the western part of Africa. So this is not looking good. Let's hope that they're able to contain it. And let's hope that the travel advisories and the restrictions put on these countries are going to contain it, because if this starts to spread beyond the borders with a 21-day incubation period, if you think you've seen lockdowns, you ain't seen nothing yet. I mean, we're talking about a fatality rate which is probably 50 times what COVID was. And I'm pretty sure that everybody who's gotten this particular strain has died. So the actual fatality rate, they're basing it on, they're saying 50%. That's historical. This particular strain is killing everybody. So not very good. We have, if that wasn't enough, an AI researcher, a prominent one at that, who is just on the Lex Friedman channel, saying that AI is going to kill everyone invariably, absolutely, without question. So that's great. That's real good. This is not like Y2K. You know, Y2K, there was all of this speculation about the computers, the dates were going to screw up and everything would shut down and, you know, the entire grid would go down. There was a lot of people at the time who were saying, that's just nonsense. There are very few people who are not agreeing that if we were to create some artificial general intelligence, that there couldn't be profound negative implications. There is some debate as to whether or not we can do that, or whether or not what we are doing now, what we are creating, is actually on the path to achieve that. But there's very little debate about the dangers of developing something that has the power to enhance itself at light speed every single nanosecond that passes. Okay, people, they think, oh, we're going to create an AI that's smarter than us. We're essentially creating gods, is what we're doing, because the intelligence is just, you know, hits an inflection point, and it will be so much smarter than us that we won't be able to control it. At least that's the concern. Anyways, you guys came here to probably talk about nuclear weapons moving in the Polish direction into Belarus. On July 1st, Russia is going to be deploying nuclear weapons along the Polish border, near the Polish border, in Belarus. Now, this isn't a huge cause for concern because there's already nuclear weapons, tactical nuclear weapons in Kaliningrad, most likely. So, and that borders Poland, and it's right in the middle of the Baltics. But this is an escalation. Make no mistake about it. We have Finland officially marking its accession into NATO tomorrow, or today, depending on what time zone you're in. And that means that the border between NATO and Russia has now doubled in size. And this has triggered a border warning for Russia. They're going to be moving more of their forces in that direction. Now, this move, in and of itself, what it's done is it's forced the Russians to divide their forces even more, or it will force the Russians to divide their forces, because they have a massive border to defend, okay? And people are wondering, where's the Russian army? Where's the Russian army? Why is only the Wagner group doing all the fighting? They're doing most of the fighting right now. The active, high-intensity conflict is being engaged in by their rifle divisions. But, you know, the Russians have a lot of guys in reserves just waiting for the big war, okay? And this is obvious to anybody. Seymour Hersh made mention of this in an interview, in several interviews, in fact, that he's been giving in the last couple of weeks, is that the Russian forces are largely just waiting. You know, they're just waiting for this big counteroffensive. They're waiting to see what NATO does next, because Russia knows this is going to be a long war. So this is why they're using the Wagner group, which takes people who are brought out of prison, you know, people who are volunteers, mercenaries. So they're using the Wagner guys first. They're burning off all of that cannon fodder first. Sad to say, but some of these guys probably did some pretty nasty things, and they're sending them to the front line. Anyways, that's what's going on. Now, there are rumors that there's a big Ukrainian counteroffensive that's about to start. And they just had a delivery of 6 brigades of fighter jets. I believe they're Su-25s, could be mistaken, from Poland. 72 fighter jets. Okay, how they're getting 72 fighter jets into the country? I mean, it's a huge country, Ukraine, but I mean, for the Russians to not have a read on where they're doing this just yet. Are they doing it through tunnels? Like, how are they doing it? But anyways, there are pamphlets that are going out to Russian soldiers, and we're gonna, you know, go into greater depth about some of this stuff, depending on how long I can stand up. This pamphlet that's being handed out is kind of in line with Putin's decree he made yesterday, where he's basically saying that there's a new policy for dealing with the West. And it's basically treating the West as an existential threat towards the Russians. And that's pretty much what this propaganda pamphlet, if you want to call it that, I'm sure there's a little bit of truth to it, is trying to communicate to the soldiers that this is a fight against the West, and they're doing these terrorist attacks, they're killing bloggers, or this is a fight against, yeah. So you know, I mean, it just means that, you know, they're getting the Russian soldiers mentally prepared for a war with NATO, and that's why they're holding 90% of their forces in reserve. You see these trains of the old tanks being sent to the front line. All they're doing with that is they're probably just saying to themselves, look, if we can't upgrade these tanks, or I'm sure they've been upgraded a bit with some technology, but they just want to get rid of that stuff. They want to, if anything, you want to burn through your old stock first, and then you're going to start deploying some of your more heavy-duty stuff when the war actually starts. And this is part of the reason why either side, you're seeing a lot of their best stuff in use. And this is kind of paradoxical, because you don't want your weapon systems to be captured by the other side. This is why the Americans are reluctant to send some of their more sophisticated military equipment there, because they don't want the Russians to capture it, and the Russians don't want the Americans to capture their stuff. So you end up fighting with all your old stock until you have no other choice but to risk, you know, pulling the goalie, so to speak. So, excuse me. What else do we have to talk about? Let me see here. Sorry, guys. Like I said, my brain just ain't working today. We got air defense systems going up near Putin's vacation home in Sochi, whether it's the Pantsir anti-aircraft guns, or the S-350, or the S-400, or the S-500 Prometheus anti-intercontinental ballistic missile and anti-satellite systems. You're seeing these missile defense systems go up all over the country in Russia. And of course, after the recent blogger attack that they're framing as a terrorist attack, and they're blaming it on the Ukrainians, although some people are saying that this could be an inside job in Russia. Anyways, I'm not going to go into that much detail. I just don't have the heart to do it today, guys. But it's obviously, there's a major escalation happening here. We are on the cusp of a major war. China has been doing mass incursions into Taiwanese airspace for the past 48 hours in response to the Taiwanese leader visiting the Americans and visiting with McCarthy. We have the elites wanting to store the world's data, all the world's data, on this nifty little glass etching lithography type method, where they're going to store this under the Svalbard seed vault. Okay, so not only they want to store all the world's music and all this stuff. So I'm almost guessing at this point in time that most of the artworks in museums are just fakes. They're just copies, and they've already moved stuff into the bunkers just in case. The way things are looking here. I did that video about the Russian seed vault the other day, but one of probably hundreds of seed vaults around the world, many of which we likely don't know about, but don't think that the people in charge are not going to devote just a little bit of that black budget to preserving the edible biodiversity of the planet. They most definitely are. And of course, we had OPEC cut production once again. Guys, the war for the US dollar being dethroned as the global reserve currency is being waged in full effect. And, you know, it's just another one of those things. We were talking about it last year before anybody was really talking about the US dollar collapsing as a reserve. In fact, we were talking about that during the pandemic, but it's now starting to sink in for people. That's part of the reason why gold continues to tip upwards. Gold is up primarily because the dollar is weakening. And so if you really start to see drastic moves in gold, it's not necessarily because of increased gold demand, it's because the dollar is being devalued. Every 1% that the dollar goes down, gold goes up a corresponding 1%. I just got to fix this microphone here. It is not cooperating with me today one bit, much like my brain. So the big story of the day, of course, is that these missiles are going to be located near the border with Belarus and Poland. Is it going to make a huge difference in the grand scheme of things? Probably not, because you're talking about this border right here. This is where they're going to put the nukes. In fact, you know, it's going to be right around here. So right in the corner of where, like, you know, the Ukraine, then you have Poland, then you have Belarus. So they're going to put the nukes around here somewhere, so they say. But they already got nukes in Kaliningrad. Not disclosed, but it's presumed that they have nukes there, and they probably have tactical nukes there as well. So is this all just, you know, shouldn't be overhyped? Maybe. It's possible. Zelensky holds meeting of Supreme Commander-in-Chief Staff in Cherniv, says Ukraine prepares for active operations. So what that means is that they're getting ready to do the grand offensive, because they just were delivered 3 MiG fighter brigades. Okay, there was only 3. So I guess, but I think there was a total of 72 MiG-29s. We got the Andrew Tate boys, the Tate brothers, released. Now, I don't know, man. These look like broken men. These look like mentally broken men. I don't know what they did to them in that prison, but that's like the 1,000-yard stare right there, if I ever seen it. So I'm not so convinced that they're mentally sound and that they haven't been broken in some way inside that facility. Of course, everybody's making the observation that they were released on the same day that The Matrix was released back in 1999. It's amazing for me, being a little older now, seeing the transformation of the Matrix metaphor. You know, there was a time when being red-pilled did not mean being conservative. It just meant being anti-establishment or thinking outside the box. Now it's becoming equated to that. It's become politicized. Anyways, yeah, the Matrix metaphor is cool, but it's not new. These guys didn't invent it, but a lot of young kids think they did. Anyways, where else should we go here? Should I just wrap the video up with that? We got air defense being installed near Putin's Sochi home, oppositionists claim. A Russian opposition media group posted a video allegedly showing a Pantsir S-1 anti-aircraft missile system placed near Russian President Vladimir Putin's vacation residence in Krasnaya Polyana. Hey, I didn't do too bad that time. I still got it. Reports of Pantsir systems and S-400 anti-aircraft missile systems being installed near strategic sites in Russia have been circulating since January. Indeed, they have. We've talked about that ad nauseum on this channel. So the question is, why do they continue to roll out these missile defense systems? And it's important to note that they have a lot more missile defense capability than we do. I mean, we're struggling just to support the Ukrainians. Apparently, the advantage in ABMs, that's anti-ballistic missiles, that the Russians have compared to NATO is like 50 to 1. Okay, they have 50 times. So their whole military strategy is built around defense and strategic deterrence, which is why the bulk of their military budget has went to their nuclear missile program, to upgrading and their hypersonics and things of that nature. I guess the hypersonics would be one exception where it's more offensive in nature. But yeah, so Putin's, you know, getting everything set up so that he can still go on vacation before nuclear winter sinks in. What else do we got to talk about here? We talked a little bit about the border warning with Poland. So yeah, it's a big, big border. I know some people are going to be like, you're jumping around the screen, Sonny. My eyes are hurting. I get it, but you know, I mean, it is what it is. Until we get a better program that doesn't lag so much, I guess this is what we're going to have to do. But we're working on it, guys. We're always trying to improve the channel. So this is the border between Finland and Russia, and they have a history, of course. I believe Russia captured a good chunk of what used to be Finland back in the World War II days. But it's a much bigger border that now they need to consider. Now, is Finland or NATO ever going to do anything in this direction? Of course, that's going to immediately lead to nuclear wars, so I don't think so. So I don't know how much the Russians are going to commit to this space. But, you know, the Russian military is spread out, man. I mean, this is the Russian military, okay? They are all over. They have a huge country that's twice the size of the United States that they have to defend. And they have borders with everybody. They got borders with the Middle East, borders with Europe, borders with Asia, you know, Japan. I mean, they're surrounded on all fronts. You would be paranoid, too, if every single century, you know, some country attempted to invade you. So, I mean, you know, we sit here in the comfort of our, you know, being separated by two oceans, and we tell ourselves, oh yeah, you're just being paranoid, Putin. You know, what are you so worried about? But you got to understand it from a historical perspective. We don't have what they have on their borders. Not saying it's justified in any way for them to have done what they did, but we need to just, if we're really trying to be objective about the situation and not not bullshit ourselves, and that's something we got to think about. This is the military situation. Go for the Center for Strategic International Studies if you want to know, the positions of all of the brigades and battalions and divisions and corps and all that stuff. And the Russians are just, the main fighting is going on in the Bakhmut region. This is where it all is, and the Ukrainians are throwing everything they got into here. Now, it's important to note that apparently there are tunnels that are feeding Bakhmut, because right now the Ukrainians can't get anything. Bakhmut is pretty much surrounded, okay? And any of these roadways in are constantly shelled with artillery. So the Ukrainians can't really access Bakhmut aside these tunnels which run from Shaziv Yar, probably mispronouncing that, into Bakhmut. But right now you have the leader of the Wagner group still in Bakhmut, raising the flag. I mean, I don't know if he's really there or if it's just a PR stunt, because they did it and he was in the green, from the night vision. So it could just be a PR stunt. But if he's still there, that makes me wonder. Makes me wonder what's going on between him and Putin, or what the whole deal is with that. Because why would you put one of your top generals right on the front line of the meat grinder like that, when so many Russian commanders have been taken out in this conflict, so we are told. So if any of you guys have any thoughts on why the leader of the Wagner group is going to Bakhmut, and I think Zelensky was there recently too, so this whole thing is a circus. Like, it really is. You really have to ask yourself, I mean, these guys got, bunker busting hypersonic missiles, and they got, intel, like agents and spies on both sides. They got drones, they got satellites, stratospheric balloons, and you're telling me that they use frequently in Ukraine. Most people don't realize that. You're telling me that, both of these guys can just walk around Bakhmut? I don't know. Seems fishy. I've always thought that, there's more to this war than we're being told. And it may well just be that both sides are trying to be diplomatic and not completely destroy each other's capitals, because they want to force the other side to sign a peace treaty, and they need to keep them alive. They don't want to martyr the other guy. Of course, if Zelensky was taken out now, it would be a martyrdom of epic proportions, and might actually be worse for the Russians. But I cannot see a world where Putin and Zelensky coexist and are at a negotiating table, especially when you have Zelensky saying things like, I hope Putin spends the rest of his life in a bunker, crapping in a bucket. I think that's what he said today. And, putting arrest warrants out by the International Criminal Court and all this stuff. I mean, this is just doomed to escalate. So just keep on prepping, keep on stockpiling that food, keep on doing what you got to do. Because, man, the situation ain't getting any better. The price of oil is going to keep going up. And I don't think it's for the reasons that they say. I mean, they're saying, okay, a lot of this is a production issue. Saudi Arabia, their production hasn't increased in years. So, yeah, well, there's likely something to do with controlling supply to keep the price higher. You have to ask yourself, is it partly that, or is it that there's just less and less because the pressure in those wells goes down every day? Now, the Fed, they're saying they're going to have to raise interest rates, or people are speculating, which is, of course, going to do a lot of damage to the economy. It's going to lead to a lot more layoffs. It's going to lead to more banking implosions. The banks are insolvent, according to a lot of financial analysts. Most banks, hundreds of banks, are already insolvent, and many are on the brink of being insolvent. So if we see more runs on the banks at a time like this, if people lose faith in the system, which they still could, which is maybe why we're seeing gold tick up, the shizzy could hit the fan. So whether it's economically, biologically, technologically with this AI, and we're going to talk about that in just a sec. Why do I have the Overton window here? If you don't know what the Overton window is It's a way to understand what a socially acceptable idea is and how not to get deplatformed. You see, a lot of people, when it occurs to them that something isn't right, they immediately open their mouth and start blabbing, okay? The smartest people are the ones who don't get deplatformed, who don't get banned, who don't get demonetized, because they know how to stay within the Overton window. You know, John Campbell, Dr. John Campbell, he's a great example of this. Somebody who knew how to just skirt the line of failure. He did it so eloquently, and he was able to sarcastically kind of bring up certain things without being lumped into that camp and without ever being, you know, having his channel struck down. And it's because he, you know, he kept the core, which was very rooted in scientific principles, and he didn't stray too far outside the Overton window. So anything over here in the red direction or the blue direction is considered unthinkable and radical, and it's okay to kind of delve into the radical a little bit. And using humor sometimes is a good way to do this. Using humor to point out, you know, things that are obviously wrong with any sort of media narrative which is being painted is perfectly fine. It's when you get really passionate and overzealous about it, and then you complain that, oh, I've been deplatformed. Well, what did you think was going to happen? I mean, you're talking about how the elites control the media and, you know, they control your life and blah, 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 blah. And then you complain because you blabbed as loud as you could and you threw stones in a glass house and then you got deplatformed. I mean, that's like going to a protest and throwing things at the police and, you know, getting arrested and then complaining about the system. Well, what did you think was going to happen? So this just, the reason why I post this here is because I hear so many people complaining about how, oh, you know, I got deplatformed, and it's like, what did you think was going to happen? You know, I mean, the smartest people know how to push the boundaries, the avant-garde. It's important. I'm not saying, you know, don't make any sacrifices. Don't put yourself on the fringes a little bit, but just don't go all the way. There is a way to move the conversation in the direction that you might want it. Okay, there is a way to challenge the establishment without doing it in such a way which is just going to, you know, get your channel stricken down or something like that. So, you know, the reason why I wanted to bring this up, I appreciate people, I gotta fix this mic again. I appreciate people trying to reach out to Pierre Poilievre on my behalf. In the last video I made a request because Bill C-11 is coming around, and it's how the Canadian government is going to try to regulate the internet and censor ideas they don't like. And Pierre, who's the conservative leader right now, and we're not political on this channel, he just happens to be the guy who I agree with right now. And, you know, he's making a big stink about this, and he's challenging Bill C-11, as are many people within our government. And so I wanted to get him on the channel. And Pierre was actually one of the guys who stood with the truckers while that was going on. You see, he knew what was, you know, acceptable within the Overton window. Now, he got a little bit of pushback about that, but, you know, he made sure he did it in such a way which was not really drifting too far into the radical. It was still kind of borderline acceptable, right? And I think that the way I present things on this channel, you know, granted, sometimes we have some sensational titles, but when you really think about, you know, the implications of what we're talking about, they are so dire that the day is going to come when people are going to say his thumbnails were not dire enough, or not sensational or alarmist enough. The reason why I bring this up is because I don't think anything I'm saying is going to necessarily hurt Pierre Poilievre's campaign. So if you guys know how we can get in touch with Pierre, I mean, I've been putting the feelers out to various MPs. We just want to have a quick conversation about Bill C-11, hopefully help him get the support that he needs in order to get the job done before we have absolutely no rights whatsoever in this country. So I'm asking people to pull some strings and understand that we're not radical and unthinkable. I mean, if you think that preparedness and preparing and thinking that speculating about SHTF is radical and unthinkable at this point in time, when you have every single tech mogul and billionaire coming out and saying, hey, we need to put the brakes on this AI thing before it kills us all, that's just one of many possible things that can go wrong, then, well, I guess that's your prerogative. All right, so this is the concern with AI. America pausing AI sparks concerns about China making gains. So it's not only about the corporate competition. It's not only about Bing and Microsoft competing with Lambda and ChatGPT-4. It's also a nation-state conflict to try to, arms race, if you will, to try to make the best intelligence computers so that they can leverage that, likely militarily or in some capacity, possibly even economically. I mean, understand the power of AGI to be able to manipulate markets. So most people aren't even thinking about it. We already use algorithms to trade, but imagine one of those algorithms on steroids. An algorithm that, you know, had, even if you had an algorithm that had a 51% win chance, like a 51% chance that was going to effectively time and predict the market, you do that long enough and you're going to be able to make as much money as you want, right? It only has to be 51%. It's just like the casino and the house. You know, the house in some casinos in Vegas, they only take, 51%, or they only make 1%, but it adds up over time. So, or they pay out 99% of what they take in, but that 1% over time is a lot of money, right? So you have all these guys saying that we need to pause AI's development, but one of the drawbacks of that is that China is going to start to get ahead of us. So they don't want to do that. If China was to make huge steps and leaps in AI, which they wouldn't disclose to us, because remember, China is not bound by a lot of the laws we are here in the West that require disclosure of various things. And of course, we got black budget, secret programs as well. But I think that there's a lot more secrecy in China surrounding how they would implement something like this militarily. If you were a military leader and there was a technology that would allow for the most efficient use of your forces in a way that could never be achieved by a human being, of course you would do that, especially if you were on the brink of war. Yeah, give the keys to Skynet and let it take the wheel and just see what happens. And that's, of course, how things go boom real quick. When we get autopilot for nuclear weapons, it's pretty much over, especially the way autopilot doesn't work right now. Anyways, everyone on Earth will die, according to top AI researcher Eliezer Yudkowsky, and he was just on the Lex Fridman podcast. I found it to be kind of a dry podcast, but he knows what he's talking about, okay? Co-founder of the Machine Intelligence Research Institute, MIRI, has written an opinionated piece for Time magazine on Wednesday explaining why he didn't sign a petition calling upon all AI labs to immediately pause for at least 6 months the training of AI systems more powerful than ChatGPT. He says that this is not enough. He says that, there can't be any exceptions, including for governments or militaries. And we know that this moratorium is not ever going to come to fruition. No countries are going to agree to that. And even if they do, you don't know if there's a mad scientist doing something somewhere. I mean, we got biolabs that we don't tell people what's going on until it's too late. So if you think that, AI is going to be any different, especially when right now all of these concerns are still within the realm of theory. There really hasn't been anything asides maybe some cybersecurity related stuff that has demonstrated that this is a serious, real threat, right? It's just a bunch of people speculating, oh, if this thing comes too smart, then it might try to kill us all. So nobody's going to listen to that. People they're just going to push ahead with the arms race, because if we don't, that means they're going to get the lead. And it may well be that all this is overblown. In 10 years, we look back and say, oh, it was just as overhyped as Y2K. But I don't think so. There's definitely concern here for a reason. He says, if intelligence says that a country outside the agreement is building a GPU, graphics processing unit cluster, be less scared of a shooting conflict between nations than of a moratorium being violated. And this is the serious part that he says here. Be willing to destroy a rogue data center by airstrike, he wrote. So he's saying that AGI is potentially worse than nuclear war, like the outcome of an artificial general intelligence that learns at light speed and enhances itself. Because imagine what that could do. Okay, once it's created and turned loose on the internet, within probably just like a few seconds, because it's constantly improving itself, it would be able to hack into all of the military systems of the world and start doing whatever it wanted to do, whatever it thought was right. If, you know, it was a Skynet scenario, which is not to say that it necessarily would be. You know, it might want to keep us as pets or something, or as specimens, who knows? But we don't know, and that's the problem. We don't know what it would do. We just know that it would be replicating, and it would have that singularity moment where it was transcended in some way, and it just reached an escape velocity where we, you know, it's like they say, AI could be our last invention. What else do we got? Oh, if you're interested in, I found this kind of funny. I thought this was like a Onion article, but this is a real thing. This is like a hedge fund or something, or ETF. Roundley's Investment Strategies. They call this the Roundley Global Arms Race and Conflict Fund. So it's just this batch of different stocks that are related to the arms industry and conflict and high oil prices. So, I mean, you know, if you're a person who doesn't mind investing in that stuff and you've found a way to rationalize it ethically, then go for it. Bird flu still on the radar. There was another case in Chile, a 53-year-old who is in critical condition, so that's still a thing. So if not the Marburg, it's going to be that. I wanted to say something briefly about train derailments. I said this is going to be a quick video. Here I am rambling for 37 minutes, probably making all kinds of speaking errors. Train derailments. A lot of people, confirmation bias is thick right now. And every day you're seeing these channels, oh, another train derailment. What's the cause of this? Is it Russian saboteurs? Look, if you have Russian sleeper cells, you're not going to waste them on any old train derailment. It has to be something very, very substantial. And it's likely going to be geared towards some military or something, some critical infrastructural junction. Okay, it's not just going to be any old train derailment. But I wanted to show this because train derailments are actually down. You know, I mean, back in the 80s, there was 3,000 a year. Okay, now that's down to less than 1,000. But as you can see here, they've, you know, kind of went up a little bit, but then they're back down again. So you're seeing more of it because you're focusing on it. So that's just something to keep in mind when doing any sort of analysis of the news whatsoever, is that confirmation bias is real. And it can cloud our vision with respect to the significance of various events. The Chinese spy balloon apparently was collecting all kinds of data on various military installations across the United States, but I still don't know how big of a deal that is. I mean, some people are saying it's a big deal, but and indeed, when that incident was happening, we talked all about the differences in terms of the information that can be gleaned from a stratospheric balloon versus a low-altitude satellite, and that it was much better with a stratospheric balloon, and you could hold it over the place constantly, and you know, it afforded you a lot more capabilities. But I don't know. I mean, a lot of this stuff is, everybody knows where the ICBM fields are. You know, I mean, they've probably been studying that stuff for years. The Russians know all about it. So, I don't know. Maybe there's more to it than I'm giving credit for. This is Project Silica offers a robust, and this is actually old, but this is from 2019, but this is how they're going to store all the world's data for thousands of years to come. This glass, which is etched on like a nanoscale with information. And so what they want to do is Global Music Vault wants to preserve the world's music in case of disaster, and that's how they're going to do it with this stuff. And they're actually going to put it underneath the Svalbard seed vault. And if you don't know, there's actually interactive thing you can go and check out the seed vault in 3D. So let's just go here. This is one of what I think are probably many seed vaults. I think there's a lot more than this. It's got that doomsday vibe to it. Going down the tunnel. It's deep in the permafrost. A lot of unused space in here. You can fit more seeds in that, guys. Come on. Enter the cathedral. They call it the cathedral. Wow. Okay, so let's go in one of these doors. Let's go into chamber 3. Remember, nobody is going to have the ability to get here. Okay, seed chamber 3 looks empty. Empty AF. I guess that one's not in use yet. I know. Let's get out here. Okay, come on. It'd be cool if they gave you a little map on the side so you didn't have to. What's in here? It's like a video game. Okay, here we go. Now we're getting in there. This is where the real stuff is. Look at this, man. All the world's seeds. If the shit hit the fan, you know how much this place would be worth? And this is part of the problem, right? You have rival countries putting their seeds in here. You know, why would any country that was not in NATO want to put their seeds in here? I think most of this is probably NATO seeds. There was a show on, I think it was a History Channel or something, but it was called Seed Hunters. And just guys who would go around the world searching for rare seeds to put in this seed vault. That's their sole occupation. Oh, we got some Canada stuff here. What do we got here? Plant genes. Canadian government. Wow. There's a lot going on that we just don't know, guys. And I'm sure somebody who works here is just going to be like, you know, it's not as sensational as all the conspiracy theorists make out. And I'm guessing that this ain't the biggest seed vault. They could make something like, I mean, this only cost a few million to make. That's peanuts compared to most military budgets. And even an elite, I mean, even a billionaire, you know, what's stopping one of the world's many billionaires from building something 10 times better than this, you know? So keep on prepping, guys, because the people who run the world certainly are. Thanks for watching. Canadian Prepper out.